Postgame on HQ is presented by Ring. Joe Musso running point alongside the two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden, a man who knows what it takes to get there, and a big step taken by these Baltimore Ravens, specifically in this second half. We're sitting there 10-10, Houston with a little momentum heading into the second half, and boom, from the kickoff to start that half to the final whistle, all Baltimore. What did you make of those final 30 minutes?
Great coaching adjustments from the Baltimore side of things. You talked about the second half adjustments. As you mentioned, the kickoff return that gave them ideal field position offensively for Lamar Jackson to kind of jumpstart this surge of production in the second half. And I know we're going to talk about Lamar Jackson. We're going to rave about Lamar Jackson, but let me give some praise. If I had a ball cap on, I'd tip it to the defenders they had on the Baltimore Ravens uniform tonight. They were outstanding. Even in the first half, remember when we didn't see a lot from Lamar Jackson offensively, it was the Baltimore Ravens making things difficult for the Houston Texans offensively. Remember, they only allowed 3 points. That touchdown came by the way of a punt return. C.J. Stroud in the second half, you talked about the adjustments, 44 yards through the air. This was the same C.J. Stroud that we saw rip apart the Cleveland Browns defense last week.
Respectable defense in its own
yes.
right.
274, 3 passing touchdowns. Today, not the same outcome. He didn't throw any touchdowns. He was under duress the entire ball game. I mean, the Ravens in all 3 levels defensively, they had a real good game plan against C.J. Stroud. They couldn't run the football. He couldn't throw the football. And for the very first time in such a long time, it seemed like C.J. Stroud was a bit rattled.
The moment and that defense suffocating everything this Houston offense wanted to do. 213 total yards of offense.
Yeah.
You want to rave about Lamar? Let's rave about Lamar, because historic numbers here on the tail end of criticism and people waiting to offer that same criticism again. We know what happened in 2019, 12 points coming off of the rest. This time, rest did him right, because 2 touchdowns in the air, 2 on the ground, 100 rushing yards. That stat line right there alone only been done 2 other times in NFL history, once in the postseason by Colin Kaepernick. It was Justin Fields who did it in the regular season. But to do it in this moment with your critics ready to scream another critique, I mean, this was some of the best football we've ever seen out of Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, the thing I love about Lamar Jackson, he never listens to the elevator music. He doesn't pay attention to what's going on outside of the building. Okay. He only pays attention to what's going on inside of the confines of the Baltimore Ravens facilities and the team and the guys that believe in him. And that's how he displayed his outcome today. When you talk about Lamar Jackson, he's not a one-style fighter, Joe. I know you love fighting. You know, you watch boxing, things like that. He has multiple styles in his arsenal. If his arm is not working, guess what he can rely on? His legs. Yeah. And that's what we saw today. He didn't do a lot throwing the football 152 yards through the air, but in totality, he had 252 yards from scrimmage, 4 total touchdowns. And in this game, it wasn't about his arm. It was about making things happen with his legs. Remember, they sacked him 3 times in the first half. They hit him 5 times. Guess what we saw, or we didn't see, in the second half? No sacks. The adjusting that we saw from the offensive line played a big part in the success that we saw from the point guard in Lamar Jackson, being able to orchestrate big-time game-winning drives to come up with a huge win against the Houston Texans.
I want to remain positive here about Baltimore, because they did everything you could ask of them in this moment. But what you said there sort of jars something in my head, because this is going to be Lamar Jackson's 2nd MVP award. That we all but know already. He didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver nor a 1,000-yard rusher this season. It's been very much Lamar-led, and it was again in this spot. And no disrespect to the Houston Texans, but will this sort of fight plan, if you will, to go along with your metaphor, work against these other teams you're seeing, not just in the AFC, but if we want to play it all the way to Vegas, potentially the talent there in the NFC?
It has to, because you talk about playoff football, you're playing against good on good. And sometimes you might be a right-handed boxer, but sometimes it's good to show that southpaw every now and then so you can kind of keep your opponent on their heels. And that's what we saw with Lamar Jackson against the Houston Texans, and that's what makes Lamar Jackson so deadly. When you think you got a good hand up on Lamar Jackson, he goes and plays with his left hand. I always had issues laying up with my left hand. It wasn't as strong as my right hand. For Lamar Jackson, in a basketball analogy, his left hand is just as good as his right hand when you talk about his playing styles, because he has the ability to carve you up on the ground like he did today, just in case the arm isn't really warmed all the way up to be able to do damage throwing the football. He's a dual threat quarterback, and he's very, very good in doing either or. And the thing I like about Lamar Jackson, especially this year, he doesn't run when he doesn't need to run. He runs when he has to, but he wants to do damage from the pocket. And in today's matchup, when things were getting a little tight in the pocket, Joe, guess what he did? He broke containment, he made things happen, and then they started to dial up quarterback design runs for him, especially in the red zone.
Running through opportunity, not necessity, and it was a winning formula in this game. You're going to pop the tape in if you're Houston and look at some of the mistakes in the first half. Almost felt like they played cleaner football, at least from a pre-snap standpoint, maybe not an execution standpoint, in the second half. What are the teaching points here? Because you almost pop it in and say, what could we have done differently? Obviously, you want to see C.J. Stroud throw that ball down the field, extend things a little bit. But what did you see, or maybe what did you not see in the offensive game plan that made the final score look like this, 24-0 in the second half?
In playoff football, you have to take advantage of the opportunities when they're there for you to take advantage of it. Right? We talked about the half of play. We kind of came into the halftime show talking about, well, great job by Houston to be in this ball game tied 10-10. They should have been up. Remember, at halftime, Joe, they had 8 penalties. How many of those penalties offensively happened on third down opportunities where you had to move back from your original mark to make it a difficult opportunity to convert? Then you factor in some of the miscues. You missed the field goal. You could have been up at halftime 3 points. You missed the field goal. So you just allowed the Baltimore Ravens to kind of hang around just in time because we didn't see the start that we thought we would see from Baltimore. It's safe to say that bye week kind of played to a sluggish-like start. But with them being at home, having the momentum in their favor, it was only a matter of time before they got that car up and running, and that's what we saw in the second half. So if Houston played cleaner football in the first half, if they took advantage of some of the miscues from the Baltimore Ravens, go into the locker room with a nice lead instead of being tied, who knows how the flow of the game would have played out in the second half. You talk about in totality, they had 11 penalties compared to 3. Yes, you're right. They cleaned up some of those miscues in the second half, but because they were so far down the hole in the first half, it was hard to overcome. Baltimore played cleaner football within the play. We didn't see so many pre-snap penalties like the Houston Texans, and because of that, they were able to allow their talent and their star quarterback to do the rest.
And it's just that. To any Houston fans sitting here trying to figure out what happened over these 60 minutes, I'd say just zoom out, because we're talking about a franchise that, with those picks in the first round and with what they did at the head coach at that position, has completely reset the trajectory of this franchise. When you look back on this Houston season and try and make sense of what they've become over these last 3 months, how do you situate that in your head as you look forward for C.J. Stroud and company?
In 2 ways. As a team, they exceeded the expectations. Whatever the expectations we all had for the Houston Texans, regardless if you had a dog in the race with the organization or you're watching from afar, they exceeded those team expectations. Number 2, they found a quarterback. They can really sleep good at night. Even though they lost tonight, they can go to sleep knowing they have their quarterback moving forward, and he is going to get better. Their team will get better. You talk about hitting on your quarterback. Those are the same, pressure questions that you have when you have a new head coach. You want to make sure, did we hit on the head coach? Did we hit on the quarterback? You hit on both. And the future should be bright based on what we visualize this program doing moving forward, because they will add more talent. Remember, yes, they won't have their first rounder because that goes to Arizona by the way of that Will Anderson trade from a year ago. But they also have the Cleveland Browns first rounder coming to them this year. So they still have resources to be able to add talent. But those are the 2 most important factors. When you have a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback and you hit on them instantly, oh, you can sleep real good at night.
I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to call it the greatest season by a rookie quarterback we have ever seen, but it is time to answer the bell. And it wasn't a rookie quarterback, Mac, who answered the bell presented by Ring. I mean, let's all at once say it. Who gets your game ball on this game?
Oh, the one and only. Action Jackson, right? Lamar Jackson came into this ball game, people talking about the 1-3 playoff record, not really playing his best football, kind of laying down a little bit. Lamar said, you know what? As I stated, I don't listen to the elevator music. No, I only pay attention to what's around me, the guys who believe in me, my coaches, the staff. And they believed in Lamar Jackson, and he answered the call big time. 252 yards from scrimmage, 4 total touchdowns, had complete control of this ball game, and put up some of his best efforts in the second half when you talk about the adjustments that we were able to see from the coaching staff, executed by Lamar Jackson and the rest of his teammates. Answered the bell big time today.
These are those types of days where they start talking different about you, and the playoff note that we all hung over Lamar's head answered. You can peel it off as he goes 2-2 and 100+ in a divisional round. All right, here's a look as we move forward to that conference title game. Again, next Sunday, CBS. It's going to be the Baltimore Ravens playing host to the winner of that Bills-Chiefs matchup on Sunday night, also on CBS. I want to take you back further here because we're looking at all these conference championship appearances. The city of Baltimore has not hosted an AFC title game since 1971. They were the Baltimore Colts. The Ravens and their fans going to get a moment next Sunday.